Okay, here we're looking at a 2016 Mercedes C350E. Now this is a C-Class, a 3.5 liter, 4-cylinder, and it is a turbocharged gasoline engine. And this is the hybrid. Okay, here we see the turbocharged 4-cylinder gasoline engine. And here we see the coil on plug. Now this has the high pressure direct injection, so these are piezo style injectors. This is the high pressure fuel rail. Here are the individual injectors, and they extend down into the combustion chamber. So this is a direct injected engine. And here we see our ignition coil, and the spark plug of course is underneath. I notice with the oil cap off that the engine is extremely clean, so somebody has been religiously changing the engine oil here on this vehicle. Now this is a turbocharged vehicle, and one thing that's important in Thailand is I want a high air intake, because you're going to be called upon to ford. In other words, you're going to have to go through high water. Common in Bangkok, there's a monsoon, and the streets just don't flood annually, but many times annually. Now as we look at this air intake, this is actually a silencer. This is actually a mesh right here, so it's going to help to kind of dampen the sound of the engine. And here we come into the air cleaner assembly. Here's our pleated paper air cleaner. We leave the air cleaner and go right down to the inlet of the turbocharger compressor. And then we leave the compressor and come up through the after cooler. This is an air to coolant after cooler. Now what they oftentimes do is I need to keep this temperature as low as possible, and if I use engine coolant, well, automatically with a warm engine I'm up there around 200 degrees Fahrenheit, 100 degrees centigrade. That's not a good idea. So what happens is I have a little auxiliary cooling system, an auxiliary radiator, and an electric coolant pump. It uses just conventional coolant, circulates it through this heat exchanger to try and bring the temperature of the compressed air down. So we're restoring or increasing its density, and they're introducing it to the throttle body and then into the intake manifold. Now here I suspect this is my inlet air temperature sensor. Now on some of these vehicles, their actual logic for controlling, or I should say measuring airflow, is speed density. So on a speed density system, you're not going to have a airflow meter. Instead, I measure inlet air temperature and manifold absolute pressure. And sometimes those sensors can be combined into one, but it's a speed density system. The frequency with which intake valve opens and the density, the pressure and the temperature of the air in the intake manifold is going to give me an indication of mass airflow rate and let me proportion the correct quantity of fuel. All right, so here we go. Let's take a look. Here's our electronic control unit. Here we see our throttle body. Now, since this is a direct injection system, I have a camshaft driven high pressure plunger pump. So this is my high pressure fuel pump. Now I'm going to feed the high pressure fuel pump with a low pressure electric pump there at the fuel tank, but this is going to be my high pressure pump, and oftentimes this is what's called a deadhead rail. I don't desire or want to have any type of fuel return. What happens is that I just simply pressurize the fuel up there around 2200 to 2700 psi. I can actually change it. There I have a valving mechanism that I can control the maximum pressure that the plunger style fuel pump is developing, and this is going to be my fuel rail pressure. All right, this looks like a real nice little package. Obviously we have the hydraulically controlled camshaft timing, so I can control the relative position of the camshaft to the cam sprocket, and these are going to be my position sensors to give me an indication of the relationship of the sprocket to the camshaft. Okay, let's go ahead and Actually, I should take that back. These are the actual hydraulic, these are the electronic control of the hydraulic actuator. These are my position sensors. So this is sensing the position of the cam sprockets. This is my actual hydraulic control. Well, this looks like a nice package. Here I see my oil filter cap. We have the beauty cover here removed. We'll carefully set it back on. It looks like this engine has been well maintained, positioned correctly. Now, as we look around here in the engine compartment, let's take a look. Now, this is a right-hand drive system, so obviously the vacuum brake booster master cylinder is going to be over on the right hand. Here at the left-hand side, part of my electronics and my high voltage cables for the hybrid unit transmission, and this is, I believe, going to be the 9G-tronic. So this is going to be the 725 9-speed unit, and I'm going to have my electric motor between the two, and that electric motor is also the starter for the engine. And here we see the control here for it and the high voltage cables. Now, oftentimes when it sits in the lot, I usually have, this is my access to my 12-volt battery, not my high voltage battery obviously, but my 12-volt battery. And remember, even though I have a hybrid car with a high voltage battery, I still have a 12-volt battery because a lot of electronics, accessories, entertainment, lights, all operate off of 12 volts. So the 12-volt battery is absolutely essential. All right, let's take a look here. In fashion here with the hybrid, I have an electric air conditioning compressor. Instead of being belt driven, it's driven by an electric motor at high voltage. They're part of our hybrid system. There I see the front of the vacuum pump. So I have a vacuum pump. It's always a good idea to have a vacuum pump for critical accessories that need vacuum, like the vacuum brake booster. I have the single serpentine belt. It's so popular on late model vehicles. Don't even want to say late model anymore. Just simply vehicles. Our turbocharger assemblies hiding underneath the air cleaner. And here we mentioned this is the coolant reservoir for the turbocharger's heat exchanger. And this is the engine coolant reservoir. Here we go. Engine coolant reservoir. One thing when you're working in the engine compartment, especially when the engine's got a high mileage on it, you want to be careful about some of these fittings. Don't get too rough with them because they'll snap right off. And as we mentioned, the master cylinder vacuum brake booster is going to be over here on the right side, and that's my master cylinder reservoir. All right, now I have a third coolant bottle, and this is my coolant for my battery system. So obviously we have a heat exchanger, and up front we have an electric pump, and of course our cooling for the power electronics and the battery. Okay, here we're sitting inside our 2016 Mercedes C350E hybrid. Now the 12-volt battery is absolutely dead, so obviously I can't even lock the car. Can't lock the car, can't move the seat, can't really do anything, and I'll have to get the jumper box over here before I could actually do anything. However, looking at the car, I would say the car is fairly clean. It looks to be in pretty good shape here. We did notice the tow hook is kind of permanently installed out there in front, so they've apparently been pulling it around. The then this is real common with the later Mercedes automatic transmissions, is I have this electronic shifter here on the side. So I have reverse, drive, neutral, and if I want to select park, I simply press the center button. Obviously I have to press the brake pedal before I can take it out of park. Now I can't tilt or do anything with the steering wheel, but I do have shift paddles, so I can shift up and down, and we believe this is the 9G-tronic, so this is going to be the 9-speed. And a lot of these controls I recognize here with the conventional Mercedes. We do have this liquid crystal display, and here we have the temperature control for passenger and driver, and a selection for AC, recirculate, I suspect this is for the seat, airflow for the seat, rear window defogger, max defog in the front, auto mode, fan speed, and our mode to the floor, to the dash, or to the windshield. We are in Thailand, so heating is not an issue. It's the air conditioning that's so important. It would be very difficult to operate a motor vehicle without an air conditioning here in Thailand. And here we see some of my features right here. I can raise the level of the car, and here I can maybe adjust so the suspension stiffness, which is a nice feature. Of course, volume on off, and then I have a rear window shade that I can put up and down, which can be a nice feature, especially here in the hot sunshine. Nice clean center console with, it looks like I have USB charging ports. That's certainly a nice feature. I would say the car, for a used car, is fairly clean. The windshield looks like it's in good shape. Obviously it's going to need some attention. One problem when you're buying a car from the auction, oftentimes if the car is in perfect condition, the dealership or the individual would have kept the car because they could have resold it for a profit. But if there is an issue, then that's the time it gets sent to the auction. And a smart customer, in other words, a smart owner, whether it be a dealership or a private individual, always details a car thoroughly before sending it to the auction. I mean, the engine may not run, but if the car is just as clean and looks absolutely brand spanking new, just as a result of washing and detailing, that oftentimes will just bring the price up thousands of baht, just like that. So when we're here at the auction, the problem is we can't really road test the car. We have to trust them. They're going to give a rating on the car. After we purchase the car, if we disagree with their rating, we can enter arbitration, but otherwise it's pretty much you bid on it, it's yours.